I'm Mike Meru, and I am from Salt Lake City, Utah. When I was 13 or so years old, I had an awful bite. So much so that the orthodontist in my area told me I needed jaw surgery. He worked me through from the time I was 13 all the way through that surgical procedure, and it changed my life. Because he changed my life, I wanted to do the same thing in my community, in the lives of other kids. So. Orthodontics, it means so many things. It's a community. Orthodontics gives me the ability to change people's lives. It gives me the ability to brighten people's days. Orthodontics has shaped the way, that I'm able to help my community. Orthodontics to society, we have the ability to change people's lives, to give them confidence when they didn't have confidence. I feel so fortunate to be able to do that for the community as a whole. It's fantastic, the changes we are able to create in people's lives. Something that most people don't know about me, when I'm not practicing orthodontics, I'm probably climbing a mountain somewhere. I'm still fortunate enough to be sponsored by quite a few big companies who help me travel around the world and climb peaks.
What are, just off of that, what are some of the peaks you've climbed?
So I would say probably my favorite ski descent that people would know is I've been able to snowboard off the summit of Denali. I've spent a lot of time climbing in the mountains of Alaska, and in and around Utah, Nevada, Colorado. I have a lot of first descents, lines that, I was the first person to snowboard and that nobody has snowboarded since. So it's fun.
If you say so.
The most difficult case to treat, Class 3 non-surgical cases. Those are always a challenge for me.
And why is that?
So for the Class 3 surgical cases, I love them. I have a fantastic surgeon in the area, and every case turns out beautiful. But those individuals who either don't have insurance, can't afford surgery, or choose not to have surgery, it's such a difficult. The mechanics are so difficult that, dealing with flaring in that strong lower jaw, for me, that's probably my biggest challenge. I would say that the most important change in ortho for me has been the change in focus from just occlusion to both occlusion and facial aesthetics, looking at the individual as a whole and basing the outcomes in treatment on not just how their teeth fit, but how their lip structure looks, how their facial aesthetics looks, and then also how it plays a role in their entire, into their entire body, meaning TMJ, airway, all of those types of things. I like that us as orthodontists now start to look at the human as one whole and not just a mouth. I see the biggest change in the next 10 years being individualized treatment assisted by technology, whether that be artificial intelligence, whether that be how we treatment plan on the computer and then implement that in the individual's mouth. But it will be computer-assisted individualized treatment. I was very fortunate to have another mentor in my life, Dr. Keim. And Dr. Keim got me involved in the JCO as a second-year resident. And 13 years later, after graduation, I'm still fortunate to work with the JCO. Being the webinars editor is probably the most fun position at the JCO. I think the best part of it is myself, you, Phil, Neil, we are always looking at what's happening in orthodontics, what's changing, what new technologies are coming out. And then we go straight to those individuals. And rather than having an article that sometimes takes months to go into production, you get it right away. We go to those individuals and we say, hey, can you come and talk to us about it? And we're getting literally up to the minute data. So I think that's really neat and different about the webinars that you don't see in other facets of the journal or other publications.
And what are you looking for when you're looking for webinar topics and speakers?
In looking for webinar topics, I'm always looking for new technologies, new information that hasn't been discussed widely, or things that have been discussed widely, but that haven't had a modern spin on them. I'm going to use Chad Foster. So if anybody tuned into Chad Foster's webinar 6 or 7 months ago, gosh, that was incredible. It was one of the best finishing lectures I've ever heard. Finishing has been talked about in orthodontics, gosh, since Steiner, how many years ago? But I feel like Chad Foster brought a new and modern edge to it that not only was evidence-based, but was cutting edge. So I love that about these, that we're constantly getting that type of information.
And what about speakers? Anything in particular you're looking for speakers?
When I'm looking for speakers, I want somebody who's at the forefront of what they're doing in their niche within orthodontics. I want somebody who's engaging. I want somebody who can answer questions on the spot. Big names are wonderful, but it doesn't need to be a big name. It's somebody who's engaging and has information that the orthodontic world needs to hear. The JCO for me is where I turn when I need evidence-based clinical advice. I feel like the best clinicians in the world are here. And so, if I need to know how to treat a specific case, or if I need another viewpoint on a specific patient, I go straight to the JCO, whether it be old articles or whether it be the webinars. That's where I get my advice. I also read it every month, and I feel like I'm constantly learning because every single month new information is coming out, and the JCO is always at the forefront. For me, I hope the JCO means the same. I hope the JCO to the profession is the place where people turn when they need evidence-based clinical advice. There's so many people out there and so many companies putting on their lectures or webinars that aren't always grounded in evidence. And I love that we take all of the new and upcoming, technologies, and we study them, we look at them, and we make sure that A, that they are safe to use on a patient, B, that they work, and C, we get advice on how to best implement it in our practices. For me, the JCO is evidence-based clinical research. Great question. So I feel there are benefits to both. I love the ability in a social media group to just pick somebody's brain and hear what other people are thinking, but I never take that as the standard. Social media will give me ideas. The JCO lets me know that those ideas are grounded in evidence-based research. So for me, there's a big difference. The JCO is the gold standard. I know if I read it in the JCO, if I see it in a webinar, we're good to go. I can use it in my practice. Whereas those things that I see on social media, I have to take with a grain of salt. They're not always proven. So much. Every one of Neil's articles, I feel like I file and I read those over and over again. I think the part of the JCO that I've loved the most lately is the clinical pearls, the things that Neil specifically has been putting both in the journal as well as online. And I think the one that comes to my mind right away is his advice on canine substitution, implant cases, how to bond the brackets properly. That one I used actually just the other day in practice. So love what he does. I believe orthodontists should subscribe to the JCO for 2 reasons. A, because it's a game changer in your practice. Every time you go through that journal, you're going to take something. You're going to learn something that you can take and actually implement in your office. I think that's number 1. Number 2, it is so important to support clinical research in our profession. The JCO is filling a role that nobody else fills. And we as orthodontists need to support that so that not just today, but 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, when we've retired, that the next generation also gets that same benefit. I wish that I had the mentor then that I have now. If I'm okay to say his name, Dr. Brian Horsley has changed my life. He's taught me everything I know. And I used to think I was a good orthodontist. And when I met him 6 or 7 years ago, just through his teaching and the way he treats and how he works with people, I wish I would have known Dr. Horsley then, because the way I treat now is 100%, in line with what he's taught me. Make sure you love what you do. We are so fortunate to be orthodontists. Not only was it a hard road to get here, but we're so lucky. So don't get caught up in the weeds. I know sometimes I look at, how many starts did we have that month, or what do finances look like? But we're able to change people's lives every day. And I think if we focus on the good we can do in our community, the money will come, the patients will come. So just never forget how blessed we are to be orthodontists. Best advice for residents, I would make sure, so 2 things for residents. Set goals now, know where you want to go, and don't give up on it. Sometimes the road, there's forks in the road, or there's things that change. But if you want to be a private practice orthodontist, you do it. If you want to use TADs and lasers, you take those extra courses and you do it. So never give up and make those goals now. The second thing that I would say to residents, find a mentor. Find a mentor like Dr. Horsley was to me, and, learn everything you can and just take it to the next level. I would say it's in finishing, microaesthetics plays such a massive role. When we finish and we take off somebody's braces, what gum sculpting, tooth whitening, enamelplasty, all of those things take a case from good to just mind-blowing. So for me, it's probably that.